And now to get started, it is my pleasure to introduce you to our speakers for today. Andreas Simanowski is the Senior Director of Product Development for Rehearsal at ELB Learning. And then Micah Eppler is the Account Executive at ELB and has a background in software and learning and development L&D services sales. And with that, gentlemen, I will hand it over to you.
Thanks, Liz.
Thanks, Liz. Hey, Micah.
Hey, Dre.
How are you doing today?
Couldn't be better. Yourself?
Fantastic.
Good.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar. We're going to be talking about building and scaling communication skills with AI-powered role play. Like Liz said, we love interaction. We will have some questions throughout the webinar for the audience. But also as we're going through slides and demos or whatever, please feel free to ask us any questions. I think, Micah, you'll be monitoring the chat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, if anybody wants to use the chat, you want to use the Q&A, either function is totally fine. I'll be monitoring both. We definitely want to hear from you all on this, right? We want to make sure that any questions, thoughts, concerns that you all are bringing to the table on this particular topic, that we're addressing it so that you get the most out of the time with us today. And I would actually really quickly, like even before, I'm hijacking this for a second. This isn't planned.
Go for it.
But I do have, I am curious for the audience, right? There's a recent study that came out from MIT that actually suggested 95% of AI projects over the last 5 years at organizations have quote unquote failed, right? And so a lot of that is tied around organizations came out really quickly with, hey, we got to get these, we got to get licenses for Copilot or, some of these enterprise tools, so on and so forth, and then didn't enable the humans to be able to use it. And so I'm just really curious in the chat, feel free to throw this out there. Number one, do you have the ability currently at your organization to leverage AI? And then if so, how are you enabled to do that? And I'd also be curious, like, through your if your company has like AI governance or whatever it might be, like how freely are you able to utilize the AI? I'd be real curious on those. If anybody wants to pipe in on any of those things, that'd be great. Okay, Dre, go ahead.
Yeah, that was a big study that came out.
It was.
And I think, there was such an emphasis on just kind of AI and the promise of AI. But when it came down to execution, I think that's really where it faltered, right? I haven't looked at that study, but I do remember that coming out. But I don't remember exactly what the takeaway was or the reasons they cited for that. But super relevant.
Yeah, we're getting a ton in the chat on this actually. So it sounds like a lot of Chat GPT, a lot of Copilot. Does sound like limited usage is mostly what I'm seeing. Sounds like some have internal GPTs. Let's see. Frowned upon using AI tools outside of Copilot from Megan. Thank you for that, Megan. Special permission from the C-suite. That's an interesting one, Kimberly. That's interesting.
Yeah, there's a lot of concern around, where is our data going, and is it are these companies training their AI based on our data? So that's always a big one. Yeah, big concern. Do we bring these capabilities in-house and try and host our own LLMs or large language models like ChatGPT and train it on our own data, or do we leverage the big third parties like Google, OpenAI, etc.?
Yeah. Okay. That was a really great engagement in the chat. So thank you all for sharing that. We'll definitely keep that up as we go along here. But cool. Let's go ahead and hop in the slide, right? Let's go for it.
Okay, so yeah, let's get started with this. Simple fact, knowledge doesn't necessarily equal performance. So, of course, today we have more knowledge than ever. We have courses, e-learning, videos, knowledge checks, but knowing what to do is not always the same as being able to do it in the moment. Performance is very situational, right? It requires confidence, adaptability, communication skills that you're not going to get by just going through passive learning and passing a quiz. So, if you look at, for example, athletes or musicians, they're not just reading about their craft, they're practicing it over and over and over again, and then getting active coaching and feedback. And that's to build skills, not just awareness of the techniques, for example. So, in the same way, bring that to the workplace. Employees need a safe, structured practice to perform at their best in high stakes conversations, whether you're talking to customers, patients, or internally with your own teams. So we like to say that knowledge creates awareness, but practice is what really creates performance. Some quotes here from Malcolm Gladwell and Anders Ericsson. I'm a huge Gladwell fan. He's Canadian, I'm Canadian. We were both educated in Canada and came to the US. So that's about all the similarities I have with Malcolm Gladwell. But 2008, so we're going way back there, he came out with Outliers and he coined this phrase or term or rule of thumb, the 10,000 hour rule. And he actually studied Anders Ericsson's data and came up with this rule and roughly said that, rule of thumb to achieve mastery in a complex skill roughly translates to 10,000 hours. So mastery in software development, mastery in playing the violin. That was roughly, that was a big takeaway from the book there. However, it's not just practice, and this is where Ericsson really comes in. It's deliberate practice. This is what Ericsson came up with as well. So to be successful, he's saying not all practice is equal, right? We have this deliberate practice that he defined, and it has specific characteristics. Number one is well-defined goals. So you want to focus on improving specific aspects of your performance. Immediate feedback, so knowing what went wrong and how to correct it. 3, pushing beyond your comfort zone. So tackling tasks that are just beyond your current ability. So, not throwing you in the deep end, but pushing you just a little beyond your comfort zone, for example, to increase your skill and proficiency. And then repetition and refinement. So making constant adjustments to improve your weak points. And this is something we'll show later on as well, is how we can do deliberate practice using AI. So, role play is highly effective because it does build that muscle memory for going out in the real world and having those real world conversations. So, Micah, you're talking to customers all the time, right? Practice, repetition, really going to help with those real world conversations. And because you don't know what a customer is going to throw at you question wise, right?
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. You have to, the ability to have true conversation. I think this goes for any sales rep and for anybody that's on this call that, deals with onboarding, right? It's how quickly can we scale people to a level of proficiency where, right, they're not reciting pitches or, right, verbatim scripting, right, where they're able to have a real conversation where they can ebb and flow based off of the customer's needs, based off of what they're hearing as challenges from the customer that are going to help drive your solution's value, right? So being able to get in a conversation and have that level of mastery to not only listen and speak to the client, but to also navigate the entire conversation, right? Like all of that is part of that.
Yeah, that active listening is definitely a skill that is learned through practice, I would say, right? Through repetition. So yeah, I think, role play is really critical there. Having a safe place to practice also where you can make mistakes. I mean, I tell my kids all the time, right? How do you learn? Well, make mistakes. You learn from making mistakes. And so
Mhm.
you need a
Fail
safe space
fail
to do
fast, I
that.
think is what
Fail
they say,
fast.
right? Fail
Yeah,
fast.
exactly. Exactly. See what works and what doesn't work. So, um, yeah, so and then with that safe environment, it really strengthens this long-term retention, is what the experts are saying, compared to passive training methods. And so, just some examples of passive training are, lectures and presentations. So listening to an instructor or speaker without any type of interaction, reading manuals, policies, textbooks. So in that case, you're absorbing the information, but you're not actively applying it. Watching videos, I love to watch YouTube videos, for example, and learn about a topic, but I'm just consuming the content and I'm not required to respond or apply that in practice. And so, I think really the key difference is these passive methods transfer knowledge, but rarely do they build skills, habits, or the confidence needed. So, unlike role play, which does require active participation, and we see that deliberate practice as well, concept from Anders Ericsson being applied.
Dre, can I ask you,
Yeah.
sorry, before we get to this, if you go back to that last slide, as it relates to this lower left box here, right, providing a safe place, a safe space to practice and make mistakes. When you see, so let me share my own personal experience, right? Like I've 100% been in, let's call it like a SCO situation, right? A sales kickoff type of environment, breakout room. I'm probably, maybe with a manager or some sort of higher level exec where we've been tasked to go and pitch and do some type of role play with them, right? And maybe it's in a small group and I'm in front of a group of my peers. I've definitely been in that situation where am I practicing? Yes, but not only am I I'm practicing, but I'm really trying to not look like an idiot in front of everybody
Hmm.
else. I'm probably sweating through my shirt a little too
Hmm.
much in that situation. Like I don't, it's not, it almost even doesn't, that doesn't even feel like a safe environment to, right, to feel like I can fail, right? Even though I understand that's what we're trying to foster in that situation. So when
Yeah.
we're, even as it regards to providing a safe space, what do you see the differences are between doing real life role play maybe in that type of environment, that type of situation, versus being able to leverage AI, right, and creating an AI persona to be able to have those kind of conversations and how that relates to a safe space?
Yeah, so exactly what you're talking about. If you're in front of a peer or a manager, you're kind of feeling judged, right? And you want to perform well. Like you don't want to, this isn't the place where you want to experiment.
Hmm.
And so while you may have an expert giving you feedback, and we're actually going to get into this as well with studies, people don't feel comfortable in that situation because you are sort of put on the spot and you feel you really need to be performing in the moment.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And so that's definitely where AI, and we'll show that as well, that can help with repetition and just having this space, this safe space where you can experiment freely, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, right? There's definitely, right, AI role play not going to replace real role play, right? You're never going to
Hmm.
fully replace that environment where you're in front of another human, right? Somebody where there is stakes on the line, right? Even in that role play situation, when I'm dealing with a manager, somebody who's higher level up, I'm trying to prove myself, right? I'm trying to showcase my skills, right? You're never going to, I mean, as of right now, with the way the technology is, right, you're not going to replicate that environment, but there
Right.
is something to say for that AI, like that actual AI practice environment where I do have that ability to fail fast and fail forward and
Hmm.
make those mistakes, live in that gray area where growth actually happens for me in that situation. So
well, even and even just like with the AI role play, if I need to get my pitch down or nail what is the positioning of a certain product or think like I can just get those repetitions in and
yeah,
get feedback. So yeah,
yeah,
I think there's a lot of
okay,
value there.
good point.
So chat question for the audience. How are you leveraging AI in soft skills training today? Mike, I don't have my chat up right
No, it's
now.
okay. Yeah, I was sorry. Jose put a big a big response in there, which is really interesting, right? Building interactive video about assertive communication for a full remote company with AI generated videos that simulate the situations and have a narrator that explains the learner's choices as good or not good and why, right? So it's actually there's some video branching with like AI coaching that's popping in the middle of it. I see scenario building. Multiple folks are not able to leverage AI right now with soft skills training.
Mhm.
Sounds like a lot of creating scenarios, right? Support in the role play scenario development, um, finding where pain points are from meeting feedback. Yeah, a lot of scenario creation, some interaction practice in AI role play, and then plenty that there's just a lot of folks that aren't leveraging it right now or aren't able to leverage it within their organization.
Yeah, that's interesting. Is that like an organizational policy where they're not allowed to use AI? Um,
It's a good question.
yeah,
If anybody said they aren't leveraging it for that, is that a company type of thing, or is it maybe not a tool specific, like not having a tool set for, you know, putting it into practice with in particular with soft skills training? Be curious about that.
yeah,
So
cool.
yeah.
Um, so as you're monitoring the chat there,
Hmm.
Micah, we're going to look at just some studies. You talked about the MIT study earlier. We're going to look at a few studies here that were done in medicine and a couple other areas as well as it relates to role play. And so this first study that I wanted to look at, this was for medical education, which relies heavily on communication. Professionalism is a big one, and clinical judgment. And so they looked at traditional lecture-based learning with role play in actual medical training here. And so what they found was the students who practiced with role play, they scored significantly higher in these factors of communication, professionalism, and their ability to manage patient interactions. So kind of like that bedside manner, for example, than those who just attended lectures. And so, going back to your earlier point, they also found that 90% of the participants said that the role play was more engaging and then helped them feel better prepared. So, going through these scenarios really helped them prep and train for applying this in the real world as well. So, um, you know, for example, listening to a lecture is passive, where you remember the facts, you don't build on the skill. Role play is that deliberate practice. So learners have a clear goals, they act out scenarios, they get immediate feedback and repeat until they improve. Um, Next one is just shifting to a cybersecurity example. So in this study, researchers trained employees in cybersecurity. They used three methods. The first was role play. The next was group discussion. And the other one was just no training at all. And then they ran like live phishing simulations in the workplace. Um, no surprise, role play stood out. So the participants, they didn't just feel more confident in spotting phishing, they were significantly more likely to actually seek help and report these suspicious emails. So, and then even after a week of going through this, the gains actually held up. People kept doing this, and so the role play group showed greater resilience than the other groups. And so what it really showed was it ended up changing people's behavior. So by using role play, it reinforced the behaviors that they wanted people to have. So, and that's kind of huge for like change management. We all hear about how difficult it can be to enact change within an organization. And so this was one example study where even after going through the training, the changes stuck and people actually changed their behaviors as a result of the role play.
Mm.
Another one back in medical study. So this was showing how scenario-based role play can lead to just real skill growth in soft domains, like these soft skills that we talk about. So again, communication, empathy, and teamwork. And so they took a bunch of first-year med students and they went through 3 encounters. So one was simulated, one was directly in the field, and then they exposed them to actual real patients. And after each stage, they would get structured feedback on how they performed. And so they showed a lot of growth. They have this scoring rubric called the Kalamazoo checklist. I'm not an expert on what that is, but the progression was really what showed as they increased their scores after going through all these stages, and basically showed consistent, meaningful feedback, meaningful improvement as they went through this.
Hey, Drake, can I pause you real quick?
Yeah.
Lots of questions going on in the chat. As it
Great.
relates to these studies, are these role plays from these studies, are they AI based or are they old school in-person role plays?
Some of them are AI based. And especially the next one that we're going to talk about, that actually involves AI role play and real-time feedback from AI and how that increases performance as well. So, in some of these studies they are just role play with humans and in group settings. And then other studies are actually with AI as well.
Okay. Austin actually asked, Austin, I think your question might be in particular around these studies. Maybe it's as a whole in our topic today, but it says, is the role play you're talking about text-based, like through chatting with a bot, or is it an actual verbal back and forth with a bot?
Yeah, I don't have a lot of data on that specifically with these studies. And I haven't seen any studies come out that compare text-based versus audio only versus audio and video. A lot of these tools are really new as they're coming out. And so I think we need to give the studies a chance to catch up really and collect data. Yeah, that's
sure.
a really good question.
Yep.
As we're evaluating tools like, what's the ideal, but, is text-based in some cases, that might be good enough,
Yeah.
or enough to show improvement in a skill. So,
Yep.
But this is my last study. This is my favorite one because it covers two variants. So one is simulation alone, so just doing AI simulation. And then the other one is simulation plus just-in-time or real-time AI feedback. And that feedback is grounded in expert knowledge, basically. So the AI has been trained on the domain space for the study, what they were role-playing in. And so they found that by adding real-time AI feedback, it boosted the learner's self-efficacy, which is your belief in your ability to succeed, right? It's your confidence. So it boosted people's confidence by over 27%. It improved skill mastery. and it reduced negative emotions significantly more than simulation alone. So the negative emotions thing was really interesting for me. So I think a lot of people, as you're like what you were talking about earlier, Micah, with trying to role play in front of your manager or your peer, for example, that's where these negative emotions come from. Like it's kind of stressful, it's an anxiety inducing or can be,
Mm-hmm.
and you feel kind of put on the spot. And so getting real-time feedback, they're saying that really reduced people's anxiety levels as they're going through the training because you're getting some feedback as you're going through, and then you can adjust as you're going through the scenario. So, and
Yeah,
that's actually we're going to show that later today as well.
cool.
Yeah.
Dre, I had a question come through the Q&A, and shout out to Cal here. I think Cal, I can see where he's getting the context for this question from, because I imagine even within some of these studies, right, if we're utilizing AI, his question is, right, how customizable is the AI to company specific content,
Hmm.
right? Um, to actually be used in the role play for particular case studies, right? So we've got something proprietary for our, let's call it our, let's say we're in pharma, right? For our pharma uh, business unit, right? How well can I train AI on, let's say, not only different acronyms that we use, right? How we're supposed to sell, how we're supposed to communicate, all that sort of stuff. How well can we tailor the personas of the AI that we're talking to really
Hmm.
meet the needs and the challenges that we're actually facing out when I'm talking to real humans.
Yep. Yeah, that's a great like implementation question. And I think so when companies look at solutions here, there's two choices. Do we build or buy? So do we buy a third-party solution off the shelf or do we try and build our own? And companies they're going both routes. If you're going to build your own, you have a couple choices like do we go with Google or ChatGPT as our language model, or do we try to host something in-house, a foundational model in-house, and there's options there as well. And that leads to kind of the question of, well, where is my data going, right?
Mhm.
All these options you can, training your own model. If it's in-house, okay, you have more tight control over it that way, versus say feeding it to OpenAI, things like that. But answering the question, so there's all these trade-offs that you have to make. Um, how customizable is it? I would say that depends on all of these trade-offs that you're going to make. If you're going with a third-party solution, you're going to be sending, some of your data in there because it's not going to know about your products, your process, procedures, things like that. And so there's true training of the AI versus feeding information to the AI in real time and using
Mhm.
that as a context. Because all AI agents, if we look at ChatGPT, they're trained on this huge wealth of knowledge, right? Basically
Yep.
trained on the internet, books, all this stuff. So they have a base level knowledge. And then what you need to do is feed it context of, well, here's our sales process. Here's our product knowledge, for example. And so that can be fed in real time as you're doing the AI simulation, or you can truly train it on that body of knowledge as well. So that has that knowledge in it already and it's baked in. Um, so it's kind of a lot of choices. I'd say
Yeah.
it really depends on the solution that you're looking at
Yep.
and what you're trying to achieve with your AI simulation tooling.
So follow-up question then, right? If
Mhm.
you're going that buy route, right? And let's say you are leveraging, right? You have to feed some of that into OpenAI. Is OpenAI retaining that data and training their LLM on that data?
Yeah, so I don't represent OpenAI, of course,
Sure, of
but
course not. Right.
yeah, so it depends on the tool. If you use ChatGPT, so you just use their public version, go to their website, you sign up for their pro plan, and I've got it on my phone and I'm, having my ChatGPT session, they can train on that data.
Okay.
Unless you're on the enterprise version. If you are like a software developer or a company that's making products based on OpenAI, then you're using their API to access their models. They don't train on that data that's sent through there as well. So personal use, yeah, they're probably likely training. Enterprise use, there are a lot of agreements in place and frameworks where they don't retain your data and they don't train on your data.
Okay. Good
And
to
then,
know.
of course, if you're hosting your own foundational model
Right. Then
in your own infrastructure, you're in control of it.
right, right. You're right. You're
Yeah.
building that. Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
But those are huge concerns, right? I'd say those are probably some of the biggest questions companies are going to have when
Hmm.
you're looking at acquiring AI solutions is, where's my data going and is it being used for training?
Right.
Yeah.
Cecilia actually popped into the chat. She said that she thinks that that's true for Teams use as well. Do you happen to know anything
I'm
about?
not familiar with that.
Okay.
And you can always check out their terms of use
Yeah.
on their websites. It's not fun reading material, but you could use AI to help you as
Sure.
well. I do. Yeah,
That's funny.
yeah,
Well, perfect. Well, if anybody has any follow-up questions on that customization of the AI scenarios or anything like that, the personas that they want to throw in the chat, please by all means continue to do that. I love the engagement that we're getting so far here. But
yeah.
that said, let's go another chat question, right? So as it relates to AI and role play, and again, this soft skills training, right? Building communication skills, where do you see the biggest opportunity for role play to transform learning within your own organization, right? We've kind of quoted multiple sales training opportunities so far to this point, right? But we've within our customer base, right? We've seen it used
Mhm.
for anything customer support wise, right? Call center wise, leadership training, again, new hires and that speed to competency capability, but would love to hear from you all in the chat on some other ideas. So yeah, definitely management, says Margaret, safety training as well, right? Shannon says training call center agents for soft skills, handling difficult
Yeah.
interactions, and practicing troubleshooting.
Mhm.
Um, that gets into a whole nother uh, piece on being able to record your screen, right, and actually kind of see how you can troubleshoot and how you can leverage um, the different tools that you have at your fingertips as an internal employee,
Yeah.
right, while you're going through that.
Yeah.
Leadership training, benchmarking, and reinforcement. Let's see. Confidence building with systems training. So that's a great one. Oh,
Mhm.
delivering bid presentations to
Mhm.
potential engineering clients, right? Yep. So anything presentation practice wise is excellent. Matthew, that's a deep one. State procurement and contract administration laws and rules. You want to talk about terms of terms of usage, then you get into state procurement. Good luck. Both are fun. Super fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
Matthew,
Someone's got
thank
to
you for
deal with
that.
that.
Appreciate that.
That's a big one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any others that you can think of off the top of your head, Dre, that you've seen, maybe with some of our customers that we can share?
I mean, anything, like generally speaking, anything customer facing or, even internally other teams, practicing those conversations. So there's, yeah, of course, a lot around soft skills. Um, Leadership does come up a lot, like having sort of those hard conversations, how to give
Hmm.
feedback, how to sort of do change management, things like that. Those are
Yeah.
all, as a leadership role, having practice in that domain.
Yeah.
And being
I think
like,
when you're fostering an environment of coaching at your organization, right? Actually teaching people how to coach, right? Not just give feedback, but how to actually coach.
Mhm.
Ollie says active listening is, that's obviously super important.
Yep.
Public speaking practice. So yeah, so
Yep.
a lot of these, it's interesting because a lot of these use cases, right, they're universal across industries, right? The soft skills training, it's not industry specific. Like, yes, the scenarios that you might practice them within are going to be, maybe industry, company, vertical specific, right? Those types of things. But these are universal problems, and it's really interesting how we see organizations value uh, let's even say like you're looking to buy a tool around this, right? Like how they
Mhm.
value, right, the ROI that's attached to these, right? A lot of this is tied around, uh, you know, risk mitigation, right? How do we improve efficiency,
Mhm.
effectiveness? How do we improve productivity, right? Which tie into the underlying big rocks, let's call them, right? That somebody at a C-suite would really care about, right? How do we mitigate that risk, right?
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
how do we be more effective? How do we drive more revenue, right? How do we cut down call times with customers? How do we resolve more customer questions so that, right, we retain customers at a higher rate, right? All these things are, again, they're universal across industries, but they're the things that most organizations at that C-suite level are really concerned about because they ultimately affect the bottom line and you can attach ROI to.
Yep. Yeah, like going back to your point at the very beginning of our webinar here, that MIT study showing just how unsuccessful the initial implementations were.
Mm,
Um, I think you really got to look at how are we going to measure success or measure the effectiveness of the tools that we're implementing. Because, for example, in sales enablement, being able to tie these activities directly to revenue outcomes, for example,
yeah,
because these tools aren't cheap, right? You're spending
right.
money on this stuff.
Yep.
People's time to do that. So I think you really have to be able to show how we are ramping people's skill sets quicker versus traditional methods. So all those factors are super important when
Yeah.
making these decisions about whether to invest or how do we invest in
Yep.
AI. Yeah, and
Um,
solutions.
back in the chat again. So Julie, I see your comment here. She said, I'd be curious to learn more about how AI, like other than Copilot, can be used for change management. Julie, I would love if you have an example, actually, in particular the tighter like change management. It's a big topic. If you have an example, I'd love to talk like about that. Andrea, I don't know if you've got anything just about change management in general and how AI is being leveraged with that, but Julie, if you want to throw that in there as well.
Yeah.
Ollie actually said, because we're kind of talking about success, right? And like factoring this in. So he said, in particular, it's how we define success. So not only like he's saying driving profit, but with there being the client dissatisfaction, right? That's not defined, like that's not success in his eyes, right? It's not just the profit for profit's sake, but it's actually client happiness, client satisfaction
Mhm.
rates, and those types of things. So yeah,
Mhm.
that's good input, Ollie. Thank you for that.
Yeah, there's client satisfaction rates, obviously a huge driver, but also I think looking at employee satisfaction is important
Mm,
too.
yeah,
As a software developer, we there's now some studies coming out on just how do we measure the effectiveness of using AI tools for coding, for example. And one of the metrics is really developer satisfaction. Like, are developers better off? Do they feel more confident? Do they feel more productive? Things like that. So, there are sort of these, if we can measure hard numbers, great. But there's also, I feel like there are some soft numbers like um, doing surveys internally with your employees. Like, how do you feel after going through this training A versus training B? Do you feel more confident? Do you feel more skilled? like going into these conversations or whatever we're doing. So I think looking internally also for results is really important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. So yeah, we kind of touched on use cases a little bit already. Sales enablement, of course, is a big one, right?
Yep.
Because I think if you can invest in enablement, you can draw a direct line to revenue outcome, right?
Yeah.
So there's yes, a lot of factors there. Discovery, of course, asking the right questions to qualify and uncover pain.
Right.
Objection
Objection
handling,
handling. Yep.
golden pitch, right? How do we tell our story credibly, persuasively, with the right messaging? Pricing and negotiation, that's one where
Yep.
I think a lot of reps, that is a weak spot. 'Cause, like, how often do you get to practice the pricing and negotiation? Because it's so far along in the funnel. Selling value.
Yeah.
So shifting from transactional product pitches to value-based conversations is a big one.
So
Um,
can I interject here on
Absolutely.
this? So again, I'm going to speak a little bit of my own experience with AI, right? Typically, it's been the AI kind of goes with the flow, right? Like
Mhm.
it's I'm just going to say it's not difficult, right? So again, leveraging AI
It's
like in a
very
tool,
agreeable by default.
right? Yeah, I mean, you think
Yeah.
even if we're using an email writer, right? Like we know like it's super agreeable, it writes in a certain way, right? And even so this as we're developing these AI role plays, right?
Mhm.
And developing these personas, how capable are we to make it like what if we really want to have a difficult conversation? Like I want specific objections. I want it to be a hard, what how
Mhm.
I don't need it level 2, I need it level 9, right? Because I'm going to run into those.
Yeah.
How possible is that? How easily is that able to be done?
Yeah. So that's, I think, as people are looking at solutions, that's something that you definitely want to test, right? You want something that reflects real world conversations,
Hmm.
reflects sort of uncomfortable conversations or situations that you're going to be in. And yeah, that is definitely possible. Doing it yourself is going to be difficult. There's a lot of sort of system prompt engineering that goes into this, guardrails that get put in place, things like that. But yeah, I think like in the example we're going to show, we'll see some of that. And it's very nuanced, right? People are very nuanced in their communication, their inflections in their voice, how do they sound, and in AI, we can mirror a lot of that today.
Yeah.
So it's yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
That's good.
pretty interesting.
Austin just hopped in the chat. He said, maybe I missed it, but are you going to go over what AI role play platforms you recommend for use? And Austin, I know we've got one that we're going to show. Dre, I want to keep us, like you and I, we could continue to fireside chat this thing all day, right? We've got
Yeah,
16 minutes left, so let's
yeah,
make sure we get through where we're going to get to. Austin, we're actually going to show you. Admittedly, we do have our own, but we can also talk about other role play platforms that we've seen. But we're going to show you an example of how this can be done and how we do it at ELB with our customers as well. So last chat question here, right? Does this approach solve the challenges you're facing in your training, right? Does leveraging AI, because I know a lot of organizations are doing this type of role play practice, but does AI help you scale it, right? If you're doing real live role play right now, a lot of times you have to get some kind of mentor coach. There's another human involved. Does being able to leverage AI to remove that person from the equation, does that help solve a challenge that you're facing, right? Or what other challenges that maybe we haven't mentioned today that you're seeing in your own organization? Would love again to have everybody hop in the chat and maybe share some of those and we can talk about some of those. But this will be our last chat question for the day.
yeah. And so I think from here, Micah, got about 15 minutes left.
Mm-hmm.
So I think once we get through this question, we'll maybe dive into a live example.
I fully agree with that. With as active as everybody's been on the call today, and again, thank you all for that. It really makes our lives. We like talking with you all rather than at you. But I have a feeling that showing it, we're going to get some more questions on it.
Yeah,
so
I really want to get to everybody's questions. I think that's the most valuable thing here.
So Ross said here, the challenge may be training the learning how to work with the AI. Right. Oh, sorry. He clarified, right? Training the learner on how to work with the AI. Sorry, Ross. I get you now, though. That makes sense. Let's see. Sarah hopped in here. The challenge is so many people refusing to role play or have such a negative reaction to live role play. Knowing role play is so integral to growth, looking for how we can be open to new ways to making this work. This goes back to that's old school rehearsal on that one, Sarah. And it really we've found at ELB that it definitely has to do with how you communicate what it is, right? The tool that we have here at ELB that's called Rehearsal, a lot of organizations have implemented it, and there is a proper way to communicate what it is, right? It's not meant to be Big Brother. We're not just capturing what's going on camera with you. Like, it's really meant to be a reinforcement tool, right? It's meant to be a practice tool. It's meant to be a place where you can hone your skills so that you can be more successful, right? Communicating the positive aspects of it, not just, hey, we've got a role play platform, here you go, right? Is a great way to do it. There's a great way to roll it out where you start out with scenarios that don't have to do with people's work at all, simply opinion pieces where they get to not only to experience the technology, but they get to just share something, a positive thing, right? Hey, what's your best family vacation and why? Hey, what's your favorite ice cream flavor? Defend your position, make it something fun, something non-work related, right? And then you have somebody that does come in, and whether in this case, we've been talking a lot about AI coaching and feedback, but if you did have a mentor, a manager, whoever it is that maybe another human that you want to provide feedback, they can come in and provide that positive reinforcement type of feedback. And so you're setting the foundation that this isn't just a critical feedback platform, right? Or whatever it might be, right? So there's really a way to go about that. So that's a really great question, but there are ways to get around that for sure. Austin said definitely would utilizing an AI tool like this would help or facilitating difficult conversations. Yep. Betsy says the challenge, getting SMEs to provide the information needed to guide the AI in making decisions. Ooh, Betsy, that's a really good one. Bobby doubled that one. She agrees, seconded that particular topic there.
Nice.
So there we go. Excellent stuff.
Okay. Yeah. Real world challenges, right? A lot of this comes down to how do we implement the solutions? How do we roll out the training? How do we measure it? Etc. So yeah, scale is a big one.
Scale's a big one.
And that's, I think one where these AI tools can really help, right? It's not one-on-ones. You can roll out the same training to everybody in your org and scale it that way. So that's definitely a huge advantage.
Cool. All right, 11 minutes left. Bring us home.
Okay, let's
take a look at it.
I'm just going to switch over to my other screen here. I got signed out at the exact wrong time.
At the perfect time. At the perfect time. Appreciate that.
Oops. This one. And just making sure my sound is shared. So hopefully that works. Okay. Yep. So I'm just going to hop in. I've got a really, this is just sales enablement scenario here that we've built. I'm doing your job, Micah. I'm the salesperson. And I'm talking to our client here or prospect who's head of sales enablement. He's got some enablement tools that he's been working with. And this was built less specific about, okay, what are we actually trying to sell? This was more specific to what we call Socratic discovery. And so I'm trying to listen to their problems, uncover their issues. He's going to be throwing a bunch of objections as well. And really, it's more about kind of covering these goals here that we've laid out. So I'm just going to jump right in here. I'm going to show, I've got my goals. So trying to build trust, identify priorities or a single priority, what is their current approach, understanding gaps, etc. So this is sort of like we're trying to reinforce this process internally and practice with AI. I'm also going to turn on my insights. I'm going to get personal feedback on how I'm doing in the moment. And I'm just going to jump in. Hey, Morgan, how are you doing today? I just want to make sure.
Hi there. I'm doing all right, thanks. Just trying to keep up with everything on my plate. How about you?
Can you hear that audio okay?
Yeah, you're good. Yeah, that's great.
Great. Great to hear, Morgan. Just wanted to let you know we're actually live on a webinar right now, so I hope you don't mind that. I wanted to talk a little bit about your enablement solutions, what's working, where you have any friction points today.
A webinar, you say? Well, that's a new twist. As for enablement solutions, we've evaluated a lot of them lately, and honestly, we're feeling a bit of vendor fatigue. I'm not sure there's anything new you could tell me, but I'm open to hearing about any specific friction points you think we might be overlooking.
Yeah, vendor fatigue is definitely real, especially if the tools just feel like you're adding another system. What we've seen work well is when enablement doesn't live in its own silo, but it's embedded directly into your workflows. For example, inside Salesforce or Teams, like you're currently using today. That way your reps don't feel like it's extra work. Do you mind sharing more about what your current pain points are? So, you know, as you can see, I'm going back and forth with Morgan and I'm getting real-time feedback in here. So like me to reframe the conversation towards integration, keep focusing on how my solution can seamlessly fit into existing workflows, etc.
And so Dre, the AI here and this feedback, right? It's changing with each submission you're providing, and then I would assume the feedback is tying basically back to the goals, right, that we've set in this scenario. Is that right?
Yes, yes. Yeah, it's
Okay.
all tied into the goals and the structure of the conversation. And so, you know, what's interesting too is working with AI is if I tried to script this, it's always going to be a slightly different conversation, or it's, you know, it's always changing up the conversation as well. So even today, like if I try to read a script, the AI agent is changing their responses based on what I say. And, you know, so it's always kind of, there is that element of randomness, which is really nice with AI. Also, it's, you know, on the one hand, it's inconsistent, but on the other hand, it's a little more like the real world where, you know, it's, can't always predict exactly what the flow is going to be like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So as Dre continues here, I'm assuming Dre, you're going to continue in this scenario potentially. I'd love to get anybody in the chat just initial reactions to what you're seeing in this, and I'm curious to know if anybody has any questions on the solution. Is it what you thought it would be? Different than what you thought it would be? Would be curious to hear from anybody in the chat.
Yeah, and we do have about 5 minutes left too, so I do want to keep this open to just general questions from the audience. So I am gonna end this here. You know, we did get kind of a taste of like, okay, here's how AI can talk and we can have an interaction. We can get some analysis and feedback. And so, because that's always a question too, is like how can we kind of grade the performance of the learner and give them
Hmm.
feedback at the end? And so that's I think another important piece too, not just feedback in the moment, but at the end. And so
Yeah.
here, because I just cut it off so quickly, I'm not going to be meeting a lot of these criteria, but we do get very specific feedback to the process and the goals here. So I did not guide Morgan to identify a specific priority or challenge to focus on. So that's an
Yeah.
area where I can improve. I didn't explore the current tools, how they're performing against KPIs or uncover specific performance gaps, etc. So
Right. Right.
very, very specific, very nuanced, very directed to just the current conversation that you had as opposed to generalized feedback.
Yeah. Um, Getting some good questions here in the chat. So this report is really excellent, though. It's really cool.
Yeah.
Dana actually said, "Very cool. Can you tell me more about the countdown clock?" Right, there was kind of a countdown clock that was going on. But what is that piece?
Yeah, so we put a time limit on it. It gives the learner just a little bit of a sense of urgency, and so like when you're designing these what we call environments, um, we do you can set okay, well, realistically, how long should this conversation go on for?
Mm,
We don't want it to be totally open-ended, and they're going for an hour, for example.
right.
But like, what is the roughly the time frame that
Yeah.
we want the learner to achieve these goals by?
Yeah. Not only does that make it more real world, but I also imagine for organizations, right? It's a great way to keep people to scale, right? With keeping track
Mhm.
of time and platform because everybody's got other responsibilities that they should
Yeah.
be doing, right? You don't want them in the platform for a too crazy long type of
Yep.
thing. So that's good.
Yeah.
Okay. Megan also hopped in. What's the back end setup for scenarios and branches like? Like maybe just a general timing. Like how long did it take you to create this particular environment, roughly?
Yeah. So, we had a demo the other day with a customer, and they gave us 4 scenarios, and it took about I think 2 hours to create all the content. Because part of that is we want to test it and see if it's realistic or not, but it's pretty quick. And then we have like everything, we're practicing with an AI agent here. We also have AI assisted tooling to help you create the content for these environments.
Hmm.
So, it really depends. I say it depends on how nuanced is the environment going to be? How much information do you want the AI agent to have or know about the situation? Things like that. If you have that
Hmm.
readily available, great. It's, largely a copy and paste exercise at that point.
Yep. Couple other really quick questions. We got 1 minute left, and I know Liz is going to pop on and show her face here in just a second. Kimberly said, "Do you think AI can be used to give consistent assessments?"
Yes, it it of course depends on how that's being done, right?
Yeah.
What are we assessing? Is it speech? Is it text? Is there a very specific grading rubric? And then I think always AI does best when you have examples of here's an example of what a good response look like. Like this is a 10
Mhm.
out of 10. This is maybe a 5 out of 10. Reference to examples is you're going to get the best results that way.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for that. I don't know. I did my best to try to get to everybody in the chat. We had super great engagement over there. If we didn't get to it, please reach out to us. Dre and myself, we're always available. We'd love to hop on calls with any of you to talk more about this if we want to. But thank you everybody for your time, for your engagement, and for checking us out today. Thank you.